Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something absolutely radical. We're diving into UG Krishnamurti's paradigm-shifting critique of the spiritual marketplace. You know the space: mindfulness, philosophy, spiritual self-help. Well, UG looked at that entire landscape and literally flipped the script. If you've spent any time exploring this world, brace yourself, because the concepts we're getting into today are going to challenge the very foundation of those pursuits. We're talking about what he famously called the holy business. So let me ask you this right out of the gate. Can anyone actually give you enlightenment? Think about it. When we seek out teachers, guides, or gurus, there's this underlying assumption, right? That they have something we don't, and that if we just listen closely enough or practice hard enough, they can just hand it to us. But what if that whole premise is entirely backwards? What if the very act of looking to someone else for the answer is exactly the thing keeping you from finding it? That right there is the central conflict of our explainer today. Okay, let's dive into this. UG Krishnamurti didn't just critique, a few bad apples in the modern wellness space. No, he went all the way back. According to the source material, he dismissed a 2,500-year unbroken chain, from the 6th century BC Buddha all the way to modern figures hailed as world teachers. He labeled the whole lot of them as, quote, a bunch of exploiters. It's an explosive claim. He didn't care if it was an ancient, revered tradition or modern commercialized spirituality. To him, they were all running the exact same enterprise. Section 1. Rejecting the famous masters. Putting the idols to the test. Now, how did he arrive at such a brutal conclusion? Well, UDG didn't come up with these critiques in a vacuum. He wasn't just sitting alone in a room theorizing. The sources show his perspective was forged in the fire of direct engagement with the heavyweights. We're talking about absolute titans of the modern era, specifically Ramana Maharshi and J. Krishnamurti. He went straight to the men considered the absolute pinnacle of spiritual realization in his time, wanting to see exactly what it was they were supposedly offering. Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive contrast you see here. On one side, you've got the universally accepted public perception, which treats these teachings as profound, life-altering, totally sacred. And on the other, UG's fiercely dismissive assessment after examining them up close. He literally called their highly venerated teachings archaic hogwash and phony baloney. Talk about not holding back. He completely stripped away the mystique and just looked at the raw substance of what was actually being sold. And the critique didn't stop at the philosophy. It got personal. Our source material notes his realization that these so-called holy men were, well, kind of hypocrites. Sure, they had this captivating rhetoric about transcending the ego, but behind closed doors, their actual lives were surprisingly shallow and petty. The reality of the men behind the curtains simply did not match the grandiose PR. It was like finding out the Wizard of Oz is just a guy pulling levers. Section 2. Inside the holy business. The mechanics of a profitable trap. So, if the teachers are empty and the teachings are hogwash, why is the industry so massive? Well, this brings us to UG's concept of the holy business. Through his lens, this isn't a pathway to salvation at all. It is strictly a profitable industry, and it's built on two main pillars. First, human vulnerability, specifically what he called neurotic fear. And second, the grand promise of something that, he argued, simply doesn't exist: enlightenment. It's a business model capitalizing entirely on our internal anxieties. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact mechanics of how this trap operates. It's an entire ecosystem. You need hypocritical holy men willing to play the part and gullible seekers willing to believe them. But the real engine? That's the neurotic fear. It's that deep-seated anxiety that something is fundamentally wrong with us and needs fixing. That fear keeps people searching endlessly for a state of being that just isn't there. As long as the fear is there, the search continues and the cash register keeps ringing. Section 3. The Guru with no message. The ultimate refusal. So, what do you do when you realize the whole system is a trap? UG stated his position as plainly as humanly possible. I have no message for mankind. He absolutely refused to become a guru himself. Think about it. In a marketplace where literally everyone is trying to sell you a method or a path to peace, he maintained he had absolutely nothing to teach. By doing that, he actively dismantled the whole guru-disciple dynamic. He just wouldn't let anyone put him on a pedestal. He laid out a perfectly logical progression for how this works. Let's call it the trap cycle. Step 1. A man supposedly becomes realized. Step 2. Almost immediately, an organization is built around him to spread the word. Step 3, that organization inevitably turns into a profitable industry because, well, it needs resources to survive. And finally, step 4, a brand new trap is created for the seekers. It's inescapable. Even if that initial realization was 100% genuine, the second it gets organized and sold, it devolves into just another product in the holy business. So the crucial point is this absolute paradigm-shifting assertion. You cannot be given enlightenment because you already have what they have. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. Yuji believed no one can hand you something you don't actually lack. The whole premise of seeking is that you are deficient and the guru is complete. By saying you already possess whatever they claim to have, Yuji is arguing that the search itself is the problem. Looking for it implies you don't have it, which keeps you permanently stuck in the seeking cycle. We've seen how Yuji Krishnamurti dismantled the idols, exposed the psychological engine of the holy business, and flat out refused to play the guru game. He leaves us with this incredibly stark reality where the pursuit of enlightenment is itself the illusion. So I want to end by turning the mirror back on you. If spiritual teachers are just participating in a profitable industry, and if these organizations only ever create new traps, where does that leave your search? If there is nothing to find and literally no one to give it to you, what is your next step? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.